Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the HR Tech Lions podcast. This is Julio, your host, as usual. And today we have a very special episode and a very special guest. Hannah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Julio. I'm Hannah Yurk, and I am an English language specialist, communication specialist for HR professionals. And that's how you and I got in touch originally, Julio.
Absolutely. The HR world is quite tiny. And what we'll talk today, so the title and the topic of the episode is Poor English and the HR. So we'll basically explore some of the effects that not a good command on the English language has on the HR function and some of the ways that you can go about fixing that. I'm going to start with a very simple question, Hannah. I just want to know, obviously, you picked HR as a niche, right? Um,
Mhm.
what have you found in this time working with HR professionals in this regard?
Well, obviously, HR need English,
Mhm.
really need English for, especially for multinational companies that they're working in. It's really important to be able to communicate effectively with all kinds of stakeholders at different levels and across different locations. And yeah, one of the main challenges I find is just the lack of access that people have to using English outside of their work, and what this causes is, a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lack of confidence about being able to use English in those really important situations that they need to use it, like meetings and
Mhm.
presentations.
Actually, I wanted to pick on this specifically because obviously I follow your content religiously, and you talk a lot about this lack of confidence, right?
Mhm.
And can you expand a bit on what you see specifically in this area with your coachees, let's call them?
Yeah, well, lack of confidence, I mean, for many people, I think that means to them that they don't feel like they can fully represent themselves when they're speaking in English. So they are in their own language, obviously extremely professional, extremely experienced, and they've got all the know-how about HR, and they want to make those recommendations and bring their themselves to the table, but when they get that block in the moment of not being able to use English, that holds them back actually from speaking and sharing those ideas that they want to.
Yeah, I look actually. I was thinking about my days when I was in London and I was learning English. For obviously, I didn't always speak like this. I was sounded far more Italian at the time, and I remember that what saved me was the fact that I just didn't care. I would say the weirdest stuff. Like sometimes people would be like, "What? Like that's what language is that?" Like picking up from video games I played in my child, like the weirdest things, right? And obviously, unfortunately, most people that learn languages aren't so, let's say, brave. They care quite a lot. And in my experience working with HRs for now 10 years, the HRs are not like the sales and marketing types, right? They're not so outgoing. So how do you see, obviously, what's your experience with the personality types that you worked in this era, and how does that afflict their English proficiency?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I'm like you, Giulio. I live in Italy, and so I speak Italian on a daily basis, and I have adopted that, not caring factor, and that means that I just go for it. But, when you're living in the country, it's a different situation because you have the opportunities daily. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake at all. But I think what happens is when the only opportunity that you have to speak English is when you are in that really important meeting where, especially if your colleagues are native English speakers, they're just, they're running through quick through these points, and you only have, maybe a small window of opportunity to speak. And that's not really the moment where a lot of people want to be kind of taking that risk and
Mhm.
maybe making a mistake, potentially. And so that's what really holds them back. And they don't have that chance to experiment, make mistakes, and learn from them.
And actually, what you're saying particularly resonates because I know from experience that the HR function isn't always the one that gets given the most space in a company, right? It's not directly revenue generating. The revenue and things they do generate is extremely hard to track so far. This will improve with technology, and obviously this means that they, especially if they lack this confidence, they can very easily be railroaded by sales and marketing. I'm talking about sales and marketing because usually they are the two biggest voices. They don't care. They just want their opinions to be heard. So obviously this can create a very problematic situation because the HR function is fundamental and yet doesn't get to maybe express their opinion in the right way, right?
Absolutely. And but do you know what? Like, it's not always about somebody's personality, because in your native language, a lot of people that I work with, they are really outgoing people, and they would have absolutely no hesitation to, break into a meeting and put
Mm-hmm.
their idea in competition with the sales and marketing team, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to doing that in English, we have to find our own voices in English, and I do that as well in Italian. I'm much more kind of active in Italian. Maybe I've taken some of the
Mm-hmm.
the hand movements into English as well. But if we don't find our voice and our way of speaking in a foreign language, then, and also the cultural differences, we don't know how to navigate the cultural differences, that can be a big hindrance
Mm-hmm.
to speaking up as well.
Absolutely. And also, like, I think a further issue that can tail from this is that generally speaking, leadership always values like outgoing confidence, etc. And you could be someone extremely confident, etc. But obviously if you can't express that in public meetings, then the other people will think, well, this person is weak, right? And that means next time there's a promotion coming or your evaluation, they'll be like, well, this person lacks the true leadership material we're looking for, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. To get HR's ideas onto the table and considered, you need to be much more assertive, whether that's in a foreign language or not. Job opportunities, totally agree with you on that as well. And even going into job interviews, as a candidate,
Mhm.
not just as the interviewer, but as a candidate, if you don't feel secure and confident in speaking and selling yourself in English, it doesn't matter, if you're a better, more experienced candidate than, let's say, a native English speaker. If you can't sell yourself in an interview, you know, you
True.
you have fewer chances as well.
True, true, true. Actually, I remember in my past life as a recruiter, I've seen exceptional candidates. When I had looked, we gotta talk 2 minutes in English. Is that all right? And be like, and then they would speak in English, and they would, like just it's gone literally. And a lot of the time, I would have the one that probably didn't speak such good English, but just didn't care and was going for it and actually performed quite well. So definitely, just so many different. Let's say effects of having or not having the right English level. Now, we talked enough about obviously why this is a problem for the HR function, and obviously many other people. But again, the HR having such a precise balance to play in a company can even be more problematic than that, right? Um, how would you say? Let's say I'm an HR person. I've got my level is like B1 level. So, I understand, I can talk somewhat, but I gotta get to the B2. I gotta get to that level of confidence, of vocabulary, etc. So what would be your tips as an expert on how to fix this?
Well, first of all, you got to figure out what your challenges are. So some people do have, they have a really good range of vocabulary, but they're just not using it.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely need to figure out what your gap is. Okay, your skills gap. So somebody might be a B1, but they might be really good at writing, they might be really good at listening, but terrible at speaking. Or somebody might be really excellent with grammar and really accurate, but they just they're too direct and they leave a bad impression on the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely the first thing you have to do is understand where your gaps are,
Mm-hmm.
and then find a plan, organize a kind of a roadmap to plugging those holes and bridging those gaps that you have. So that could be, you know learning more specific vocabulary, business vocabulary
Mhm.
that you would need to use. So HR don't need to only learn HR terminology, but they also need to learn a lot of business vocabulary, because when they're selling their ideas to their stakeholders, they need to be able to speak the language of their audience as well. Or if they're having trouble with giving presentations, then I would suggest that they really need to practice learning the steps of what makes a good English presentation and really practicing that and getting feedback. So many different ways that we could approach it, depending on the different challenges people have.
So let me just recap for the people that might have missed it also. You start with an audit, essentially, of your own performance and figuring out where the gaps are. The second would be targeting specific areas of vocabulary, for example, to ensure that when you are communicating about the ideas you want, you actually understand it. And the third one being actually practicing that, right?
Yeah, of course. Practice is the only way, and just not just random practice. I mean, a lot of people think that just speaking to a native English speaker is going to be enough, but to be honest, practice. You can have good practice, and you can have amazing practice. And amazing practice means really getting yourself in the scenario of where you are speaking about your work situations. If you're doing interviews, practicing giving interviews. If you are giving performance reviews to your staff, practice those, get feedback. So yeah, I think a lot of people try and throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And they're like, okay, I'll just watch some TV shows and my English will get better just naturally. But no.
True. I think that's that. I mean, look, I go from my personal experience. I remember when I went to London, I really hated that people could tell I was Italian immediately. I'd be, hello, my name is Giulio. Ah, you're Italian. It's like, it really pissed me off. So I really worked hard on at least not having the very specific Italian accent, which you can still tell because I don't like pronouncing the H sound, right? Like many Italians. And I remember what I did is full immersion. So I would listen to the radio, I would read books, I would be trying to talk to people as much as possible. I moved out to an apartment with Italians to live with Australians, just a lot of different things to try and immerse yourself. But obviously that's not practical in real life for everyone at least, right? So let's say I have 1 hour a day that I want to dedicate to improving my English as an HR professional. What would you say is the gold level that you would recommend as homework for your clients?
Absolutely. Reading and listening to particular HR. It could be particular HR podcasts that you're interested in reading. So I'd say like spend 1 hour reading, let's say an article, pick a really interesting article on an HR topic from the Harvard Business Review or, Forbes. And then spend the time going through it, trying to pick out some vocabulary, trying to summarize in your own words, do something active with it, right? So don't just read it, but take out some vocabulary that you like, and then try and speak about it. Maybe speak to someone if you have the opportunity, even record yourself on your phone, summarizing, giving your opinion on that article. And the same would be for a podcast, but it's different. You can't see the words. So again, you might want to listen, stop after a few minutes and then reflect on what you've heard and go back and listen again to double check any points you've missed. So yeah, really intensive kind of examining the language and hearing the voice is probably something that people can do to really, really improve.
Interesting. And look, there's something that I actually do myself for learning. I actually buy both the book on Kindle and the audiobook. And I will listen to the audiobook while I read, right? And I find that this really helps engage two different learning methodologies in one go. So maybe that's something else. You can buy an HR book and try to listen and read it at the same time as well, right?
Absolutely. Listening and reading is great. So one of the things that I recommend is maybe listen to a little bit without the text so that you can really work on your listening skills, and then go back and listen again with the text so that you can kind of check maybe that you've missed something. That will help you a little bit as well to understand better. So, those parts of speech that English speakers use when they join words together or speak really fast or eat sounds, that can help you a lot with that.
Interesting. Okay, great. Okay, look, I think we covered quite a bit of the, let's say, analogic stuff. Like, I know we talked about this, and there's not much on the market, but let's say you got one of those people that just wants to do things on their own, and they would like to at least figure out if there's some technology that can help them. Is there anything that comes to the top of your head that isn't terrible? Not Duolingo, basically.
Well, I guess what people love about Duolingo is it's gamified. So, that's something really important. If we can gamify something and make it, give that dopamine hit, that reward center of our brain lit up and go, ooh. There's some things that you can do, for example, apps, which allow you to practice vocabulary. So there's one called Anki app, where you can basically create flashcards on your phone where you can test yourself. And what it does is it creates a spaced repetition. So let's say today I practiced 10 new words, and then I get 6 of them correct. The 4 that I didn't get correct, they'll come up tomorrow, so I can practice them again. And it kind of gives you frequent practice of the vocabulary, so you end up remembering it. So that's a really good tool. Another one that I love is called Youglish. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No.
You're gonna love it, Julia. So basically, it's YouTube. But you type in, and you can type in any word in English. And what it does is it finds videos. It creates a video reel of clips where people use that word. And you can choose accents as well. You can choose British, American, Australian. So you can you also see it in the transcript. So you can watch along and say you hear a word and like, I don't know what that word is. Let's check it out. And you can hear 5 or 6 people using that word in different contexts. So it's pretty cool.
Wow, that sounds really cool, actually. Okay, that's definitely a good one. And look, I wanted to ask you, because I was learning German recently, because I studied university and I picked it up and then I left it, etc. So every now and again it comes into my head, and I ran across this app called Falu. I don't know if you heard about it.
Falu.
Yeah, it's Falou. And what I like about it is, like, it looks like a bit like a Duolingo, but it's entirely speech-based. So literally, like, you have to talk at it all the time, which doesn't make it very practical, because you can't do it on the tram, or you just look like a crazy person talking to the phone, or like an 80-year-old trying to make a phone call. But it's quite nice because it's basically listen, and sometimes you listen and you won't have the writing, so you'll have to try and figure out what they're saying, and that's probably a little step above Duolingo. But I do still feel that a lot of technology is based around repetition rather than how the human mind actually learns, right?
Absolutely. Haven't heard of that, but I have heard of some similar types of apps. And I think even, now with AI, they're bringing out some new apps, pretty much what you're saying. There's one that I've heard, which is called Elsa. And it's where you have to speak into your phone or your computer, and it gives you a rating of your pronunciation.
Nice.
It's a paid app, I believe. You know what, though? I tried it out and it rated me a 7 out of 10. So
well, I believe this is discrimination.
So, take that as you will. I don't know how reliable they are or what measure, what benchmark they're measuring against. But yeah, these things, they're obviously going to be improving at a rapid rate. So who knows in the next couple of years where it's going to go. Right now, ChatGPT could be very useful for people who want to, say, write an email, or even for HR, you might want to write something, an official document or a job description or something. I think AI works really well in that sense. It can help you
True.
get an outline that you can then adjust for your own needs. But who knows where it's going to go? I think it's gonna take off pretty soon.
Did you see the Google said that they're gonna launch this basically it's like AirPods that translate live. I've
I've
seen
heard
that.
about yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So let's see. Let's what you see in movies, right? Someone just plugs something in and they talk in one language, it comes out in another. If that works, that's gonna be an interesting game changer. Although it'd be a bit weird, right? No one would learn languages anymore, which would make it very sad, actually, because I think the human brain is so much more powerful when you're at least bilingual. It's like just proven that it's just so good for your brain to learn languages.
Yeah, it would be, interesting, but I agree with you because we don't want to lose that. And also, I'm not convinced that an AI can pick up on like the level of translation, the nuances that are required to understand, kind of subtle things culturally. It wouldn't be able to pick up on that. Let's say if you had someone from a completely different culture and they were trying to say no to you, but it was rude
Mhm.
to directly say no. So they might use a different phrase. They might say, thank you so much. And the AI headphones are translating that, and it's just not picking up on the subtle clues.
Mhm.
That's where we need the human touch to be there and help us.
True,
So
true. But, look, so when you were talking, something came into my mind. I don't know if you ever seen it. It's an Italian movie. I can't remember the name, but basically, this guy meets this girl, and they have one night of passion when she's on holiday, and then she says the day later, she says, "See you later," which obviously for English people means like goodbye, right?
uh-huh.
And he thinks she just left, but didn't mean to leave, so he goes to America to find her. So that's like the type of scenario that came into my mind is like that sometimes you really miss the nuance. You're like, oh, yeah, that they didn't want a simulator. That's not what it actually meant.
Exactly.
Great. So look, anyway, we kind of covered quite a lot of value for how you can go about improving this. Now, I want to dig a little bit more into how you've come to become an English language coach for HRs, right? Why HR specifically, and just tell us a little bit about the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple years ago, I mean, I was teaching English for many, many years. That's been my career. And a couple years ago, I was actually on maternity leave and starting work again when, of course, the pandemic hit in Italy. As you know, we went into lockdown for a couple of months. And so I was looking after my baby daughter, and I wasn't able to work anymore in
Mhm.
my current job. And that just, gave me the opportunity to think about, perhaps I can use this to do my own thing.
Mhm.
And honestly, I've always believed that teaching specific English for a specific purpose is much more effective once people reach a
Mhm.
much higher level of English. So, fantastic. Like you go to a language school, you go into a classroom with a bunch of people, and you're all learning some grammar, right? Everybody needs it. It's fine. But at a certain point, uh, you get to a good enough level that you need to really focus on specific skills and specific topics for your English. So that's why I decided to choose a niche. And for HR, well, my husband said, Hannah, why don't you pick, somebody with lots of money, right? Like lawyers or doctors. And I said, no,
I'm
not.
go I'm gonna pick the poorer ones.
I said, I don't think I want to spend my day talking about law or medicine. It doesn't, it doesn't interest me. But HR is something that, really resonated with me. They're interested in people's development. They're really passionate about creating a better workplace for people. And, for that reason, I was like, this sounds great. I could really see myself talking to people about that. So I started working with some people, and they were just amazing. And I was like, this is great. I'm going to keep working with the HR. They really need it. And it's a really fantastic topic. So that's how I got started.
Look, this is actually one of the I love talking to entrepreneurs generally. It's one of my passions, I would say. And what you just mentioned is something so important, that so many people pick money or a high level of need, right? When
Mm-hmm.
instead they can pick working with people they actually will enjoy working with, which is just so like, look, I've worked in sales job for a long time, and all I would see is people making a lot of money and then spending their money in alcohol, psychotherapy, things that would help them forget the stress of their job. Then what the hell are you doing? Just go directly do something you like, and then you don't have to spend the time fixing yourself, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if everybody's, working with people with money, well, there are other people who need help as well. And yeah, I just saw a really great opportunity to work with HR people, because I really know how important it is that they are able to communicate effectively at work. And I'm really glad to be able to help them out.
Great. So look, now let's think a little bit in exactly how is it that you can let's say, there's an HR listening to this podcast. Well, hopefully several hundred, but let's say that there's one specific that's like, okay, I understood half of this podcast, so I want to get this even better, right? And so how would you go about helping someone? Like, what would be the actual, give us an idea of the day in the Hannah Yurk treatment.
Well, at the moment I'm working with groups, and so it's really great because, well, what I do is find out, of course, that people have the right needs and that I can help them with what I offer. In groups, what we do is we get together 1 hour a week, and we talk about very specific HR topics, and we practice skills. That could be anything from, holding an interview in English, convincing your boss how to accept your project ideas, getting budget for your initiative that you want, running a meeting, you name it. We practice all of those. And it's a great networking opportunity as well. So it's not just about improving your English communication, but it's about exchanging best practices with other HRs who work in different parts of the world, and just building this beautiful community.
That's that, like, look, I talked to a lot of language teachers and coaches. That sounds like a genius idea. So you're basically doing networking, very specific role playing situations that only other HRs will understand. So that's how you create that environment. And then on top of that, you actually getting them to improve their English.
Of course, yeah, we only improve through doing, right? So it has to be very specific. We have specific tasks, and so you leave knowing, right, all right, I've tried that and I know how to do that so much better now, and I feel much more confident doing that at work.
That's very good. That's a very great idea. I think that's quite inspiring as well, and I hope some more people will take up on the joining this group. Look, I'll ask you the last questions I always ask in the podcast, which is, since you started running the business, what was your proudest moment?
Hmm. I should have watched your podcast to get this question. Joking. My proudest moment. Just when people share feedback with me, it happens a lot. Seeing recently, one of my clients got a job as an HR director in a multinational company, for example, when she hadn't worked in English for
Mhm.
her whole career. And even though she could speak English, she was, terrified of the interview because it was pretty daunting for her. She nailed it after we worked together, and she got the job, and we're still working together now. And yeah, it just makes me feel proud when I see people take the opportunities and they go with it. They work really hard and they get a great result.
That's awesome. I think that's one of the best things about being a coach, trainer, etc., is when you see people taking the leap in the right direction, also because you help them, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Great. So look, obviously for all those that are still with us, there'll be a link to Hannah's profile. So feel free to connect with her. And generally, even if you don't need great English help, she writes amazing posts about confidence. So I think it's generally a good person to be in touch with. So thank you for coming on to the podcast. And yeah, great to have you here.
Thank you, Julia. It's been a blast chatting with you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.